In this undeniably terrible time of global disaster, mass panic and overwhelming stress, where the streets are starting to resemble the opening scenes of 28 Days Later, and the world seems to be heading towards a grim, Mad Max-style future, where what remains of society is broken up into small groups of bandits who trade only in single-ply toilet paper and packets of ravioli, there's one question that's understandably on everyone's minds, and that question is, do you reckon that the dragon from Disney's Mulan might have secretly been the film's bad guy? You know, when you really think about it. Well, get ready for concubines. Ugly concubines, because I'm Oscar from Screen On Point and I've either completely lost my mind just 4 days into self-isolation, or this is the case against Mushu from Mulan. When they aren't crying tears of pure joy over the sheer beauty of this scene from Hercules, any Disney fan worth their salt could tell you that the antagonist of 1998's animation Mulan is Shan Yu, the ruthless leader of the Hun with an accent that sounds suspiciously like that guy from RoboCop. But what if the real villain of Mulan was hiding in plain sight? What if it was the Eddie Murphy voiced dragon Mushu, who, like Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, cleverly manipulated Mulan from behind the scenes for his own dastardly gain? With the live-action remake of Mulan coming soon to any theatres that aren't looted by the post-apocalyptic toilet paper gangs, I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that one of the most beloved Disney sidekicks of all time was actually one hell of a piece of shit. To prove the defendant guilty, we have to first establish what his crimes are, what his motivations were, and prove that he had both the means and the opportunity to commit the alleged crimes. Only then can you, the good people of the jury, decide whether or not there is any truth to the allegations against him. The evidence I will bring forth in front of the jury will indicate not only the magnitude of the crimes he commits throughout the events of the film's narrative, but also that Mushu is a manipulative and narcissistic bully, and the film's real antagonist. His crimes include, but are not limited to, fraud, impersonating an officer, manslaughter, conspiracy to murder, psychological abuse, and treason. You truly don't meet a criminal like this every dynast day. When we're first introduced to the character of Mushu, he's been demoted from a guardian of the Fa family to the gong ringer. We're informed by one of the ancestors that the last time Mushu had any responsibility, he led the Fa family to disaster. Then we cut to the ghost of a beheaded man holding his own head, the implication being that Mushu's actions in the past indirectly led to one of the Fa family members getting violently murdered or executed. So Mushu is clearly motivated to prove himself a worthy guardian, and as he himself states, make Mulan into a war hero. To fully understand Mushu's motivations, we have to first understand that Mushu's goal could arguably be achieved whether she is dead or alive. With that in mind, the scene where Mushu supposedly accidentally lights the cannon, which gives away their position to the Han army, comes across less as a goofy accident and more as a deliberate attempt to get them all killed. The direction appears to back up this point, as the audience sees the cannon fired in a medium shot from outside of the wagon. By withholding this information from the audience, the filmmakers add a sense of ambiguity to Mushu's actions, making it unclear whether or not it really was an accident. When Mushu decides to write that fake letter pretending to be the general and commits the crimes of fraud and impersonating an officer, it's important to note that he has just overheard that their small group of soldiers probably wouldn't even stand a chance against the Han army, and yet he still falsifies the letter, ordering them all to the front line. When he says, "I think it's time we took the war into our own hands," he literally rubs his hands together with glee and lets out an evil laugh. The scene is directed so that for a split second after he says that, Mushu turns and seems to look directly at the camera with a sinister smile on his face. This blink and you'll miss it moment of breaking the fourth wall both implicates the viewer in the crime he's about to commit, and like Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, seems to be Mushu arrogantly confronting the audience with just how evil and manipulative he can be. When Mushu pretends to be the Great Stone Dragon and goes out after Mulan, this gives him the opportunity to sit on her shoulder, give her emotional support and advise her on how to act like a man. When you carefully study the way Mushu treats Mulan throughout the film, what could easily be interpreted as well-meaning advice from someone out of their depth starts to resemble the kind of cold and calculating behaviour of psychological abuse. Mushu advises Mulan to punch a fellow soldier and slap him on the behind as he says it's how men say hello, and even calls a soldier a limp noodle pretending to be Mulan to get her into a fight. This terrible advice could be excused if Mushu had previously had no interaction with a man, but we already know from the beginning of the film that he was a guardian of a male member of the Fa family. After humiliating her in front of the soldiers, Mushu tells her, "We have to work on your people skills," which is a textbook form of psychological manipulation known as gaslighting, where an abuser sows seeds of doubt in his victim's mind. In this case, trying to make Mulan feel like she was responsible for their failure. In Mulan's lowest moment, when she's been outed as an imposter and basically left to die in the snow, Mushu decides to say this to her.
Man, come on, you went to save your father's life. Who knew you'd end up shaming him and disgracing your ancestors and losing all your friends?
Instead of comforting her like you'd expect from any decent companion, Mushu essentially kicks her when she's down, by reminding her that she's failed, let down her father and disgraced her ancestors. Does any of that sound like the actions of a likeable Disney sidekick, or the actions of a selfish sociopath who won't let anything stand in the way of his evil plans? All I can present is the evidence. But at the end of the day, that is for you, the good people of the jury, to decide. But how would a pocket-sized lizard like Mushu have the means to commit these heinous crimes? When he first introduces himself to Mulan, he puts on a shadow performance to make himself seem more awe-inspiring and intimidating. The lighting of this scene is reminiscent of the iconic shot of Count Orlok's shadow as he walks up the stairs in Nosferatu. Is this purely coincidental, or are the filmmakers drawing clear visual comparisons between Mushu and one of cinema's most infamous villains? This scene could be read as a comical introduction to show just how tiny Mushu is when he steps out from behind the shadows, or a glimpse into Mushu's twisted perception of himself and the fear that he wishes to instill in people, and perhaps even his terrifying true form before he was demoted.
I'm travel size for your convenience. If I was my real size, your cow here would die of fright.
When he's surfing through the avalanche on a shield, he accidentally lifts out of the snow one of the Hun soldiers. Realizing it isn't Mulan, he says, "Nope," and doesn't think twice about dunking the soldier's head back under, who will likely either suffocate in the snow, or if he's lucky, fall off the edge of the cliff and die. But surely in war, killing an enemy soldier isn't exactly a crime. But what about his actions towards his own people? Mushu's ego motivates his actions throughout the film, and his character's arc is going from not being considered scary to becoming a genuinely terrifying threat. It's interesting that his arc is resolved with him scaring 2 innocent Chinese soldiers in the guard tower. When asked who he is, Mushu responds with "your worst nightmare," at this point physically becoming the scary monster he's always wanted to be, and the 2 guards jump off the guard tower. Although it isn't shown on screen, if we take into account the height of the tower, those guards probably didn't survive the fall. This puts Mushu's comment "that guy's got him scared to death" from the song "Make a Man Out of You" in a new light, as what could have once been understood as Mushu's concern for Mulan now appears like he was simply taking notes, as he pretty much scares those guards to death. When the defendant Mushu cooks the bird alive with flames in the final act and says, "Now that's what I call Mongolian barbecue," not only is he displaying schadenfreude by deriving pleasure from another's misfortune, but crucially he shows that he can use fire-breathing power when he wants to. Going back to that scene in the mountains when Mulan is desperately trying to light the cannon, Mushu doesn't offer to help. Instead he tells her, "You might want to light that right about now." When Mulan grabs him to use his flame, he tries to run away, and she has to squeeze him to get him to light the cannon. It's important to note that throughout the film, Mushu survives being stomped on by a horse, explosions, and the avalanche. So along with his self-professed ability to see right through Mulan's armour, I put it to you that Mushu is in fact immortal. So the numerous times that Mushu risks Mulan's life throughout the film, he is never in any real danger of being harmed. As Mushu himself admits to Mulan,
You risked your life to help people you love. I risked your life to help myself. At least you had good intentions.
this moment where Mushu directly states his selfish reasons for risking Mulan's life is clearly meant to be the turning point for the character, as he wishes to take Mulan home and face the consequences of his reckless actions. The contemplative score, the animation of Mushu's slumped defeated figure and the sad look on his face suggest that he regrets his treatment of Mulan and has grown as a character. However, it doesn't take much convincing from Mulan to change his mind, and he agrees to go with her to take on the Hun army, arguably to further his own goal of her becoming a war hero and him getting the credit and recognition he feels like he deserves. If Mushu is a changed character after his confession, you would expect his actions in the final act of the film to back that up. However, in the rooftop fight between Mulan and Shan Yu, Mushu fires the firework at both of them with little concern for the danger that would put Mulan in. At the end of the day, if Mulan was killed trying to protect the Emperor, she'd be a war hero, and Mushu would get the ancestors' approval and be able to restore honour to the family name. As the firework shoots towards Shan Yu with Mushu attached, there is a brief point of view shot of the moving firework. This positions the audience as Mushu in a similar way to the point of view shots that uncomfortably align the audience with Michael Myers in Halloween. The terrified look on Shan Yu's face reminds the audience that even a character as evil as Shan Yu is no match for Mushu. When Shan Yu is killed, Mushu laughs, again taking delight at another's suffering and hinting at the fact that this selfish, bitter character obsessed with status and getting back on the top shelf hasn't really changed at all. For my closing statement, the defendant Mushu had the motive, the means, and the opportunity to commit various crimes throughout the film. When we compare him to the supposed antagonist Shan Yu, yes, the Hun leader murdered countless soldiers, civilians, and even children throughout the course of the film, but at least he didn't pretend to be the good guy. What makes the fictional animated dragon Mushu a different level of criminal is that he was able to commit his selfishly motivated crimes in full view of Mulan and the audience. And despite all that, he's still held in high regard as a fast-talking, good-hearted, and loyal Disney sidekick. As you deliberate, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'd like to remind you that in this time of global disaster and despair, we can take some comfort in these words of wisdom from the Emperor.
The flower that blooms in adversity is the most rare and beautiful of all.
Thanks for making it to the end of this video. If there's any other beloved characters you want to see taken down a peg or two, do let us know in the comments below. And you can follow us at ScreenOnPoint or at Oscar Wallington on Twitter. Although I wish I'd come up with a better sign off than this, at this point I feel obligated to say stay fresh cheese bags, so Stay fresh, cheese bags.